Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott McKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
Hey there, welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast. So glad that you are here. We're broadcasting from Command's central backyard because, well, you know the reasons why. The elephant in the room is that we are quarantined. And so if you ever come down to Louisiana, you know that these days are really few and far between. So take advantage of them when you can. So that's why we're broadcasting live. And again, thank you. This podcast platform, this Industrial Talk platform is dedicated to you, the industrial professionals, the companies that get it done. You're bold, you're brave, you dare greatly, you're changing the world. We celebrate you on this particular podcast. Thank you very much for joining. Let's get going. Okay, you know that I am a big fan of sales, marketing, and branding strategies associated with that, and being able to deploy those strategies to fill that funnel so that, well, you're a success. And we're going to continue our series that we have with two, you know, I mean, they're young guns, man. They're fantastic sales professionals, and Marcus Chan and Alleyne are their name. We've been doing a couple other podcasts, and they're just bringing the truth. And so what happened is that when I was meeting with them, and we were doing a Zoom, and I was just talking to them about, hey, well, what do we do, let's say, with LinkedIn? Because right now, we got to rethink our business. We got to rethink the processes associated. You got to figure out strategies to begin to fill that funnel, compress that timeline. And so I'm having this conversation with them, and I'm saying, come on, man, what do we do? And is LinkedIn really that good? Is Facebook or Instagram or Twitter and all of the digital platforms that exist out there? And we were just having this conversation, and they were sharing these incredible value bombs of why you need to get engaged with your digital platform. And I think you need to triple down on it because you're not doing enough. And I don't think you're reaching out. You're not collaborating enough. And I'm telling you, success is in collaboration, especially now because you don't have all the answers, nor do other companies. But together, we might have the answers to keep us going, to make a success in this post-virus. So I'm having this conversation, and I can't remember who said it. Alex or Marcus said, hey, you know, this why don't we do a podcast on this stuff? Because I was sitting there just peppering them with questions, and I was just having a grand old time, and it took them to say, hey, Scott, let's do a podcast on this stuff. And I said, yeah. So you're going to see a little transition from this intro to what we were going to do because, again, if you listen to me, you know I'm on fire about the necessity to challenge your business models, challenge your business processes. You're going to have to rethink to create some resiliency within your business because you never know if this is going to happen again, and collaborate with industry leaders, thought leaders, innovate, and really have those hard questions of saying, hey, why do we need to do this? Is this really necessary? Or can we have other products and services to offer, right? You got to have that question, and you got to feel free to do that, and it's got to be open and honest and candid. And after all of that, you need to take action. So when we talk to Marcus and Alex on this particular podcast, it's all about action. It's all about strategies, actions, and you got to do it. And because if you're not doing it, your competition is going to do it, and they're going to steamroll you, stampede over you, and you're going to be struggling in this post-COVID world. So anyway, without me preaching on and on, because I'm telling you, I'm passionate about it. And you know that I am an open book. I'm out there on industrialtalk.com. You can reach out any time of day, and we're pretty good. So do so. And so we got a great interview. Once again, Marcus Chan, Alleyne, two young guns, tremendous skills in sales and marketing. So enjoy the conversation. And we had a good time, so enjoy. All right, welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast. We are having a roundtable with our friends Marcus and Alex. Welcome back, definitely. And before we were, when we were doing this podcast, or before we were doing the podcast, we were having a great conversation, and then we decided, well, why don't we do a podcast on this particular topic of gaining attention? And we were having a grand old time, and then, of course, Alex and Marcus said, why aren't we doing a podcast? And I because I was getting all the value bombs and a lot of good that does. I'm all excited, and I'm dialed in like I'm learning and not sharing it. So anyway, welcome back to the Industrial Talk podcast. We were just talking about a couple of things, and what you guys are normally you just do this naturally, and you're always you're gaining that attention. You're leveraging the digital platforms, and from my perspective as industry, and it's not a slam on industry, we're just late adopters, and given the situation that we're dealing with today with this virus, what can we do to really leverage these platforms? And we were going out there, and I was going to look on LinkedIn, but one of the things that causes problems for me, and I'll throw it out for you guys, is that here many, and I mean many, will just say, okay, somebody says I got to post something, so I go out to LinkedIn, I post a picture, and then I let it go, and I don't do anything. I don't nurture. I don't engage. I don't even engage with your customers. What do we do? I mean, how do we improve?
Yeah, that's a great question. Alex, do you want to go first? It doesn't matter.
Somebody.
I'm happy to. Yeah, I mean, I'm keen to hear what you have to say, Marcus. You're the LinkedIn king in my books. But you made a great point, Scott. To me, everything starts off with, how do I get attention, right? So when you do a post on LinkedIn, there's a number of different tactics, I guess, around how you can start to create or nurture some immediate interest. But the first thing to me is to make sure that you engage with everyone who engages with you. And so what I mean by that is, if you make a post and you get a comment or you get a like, try and follow up on every interaction that you have. So that first comment, reply as quick as you can. The algorithm loves it, and it says, hey, this must be something that's interesting because someone's commented or someone's interested. And as I say, Marcus has got this down to an absolute T, so I'm sure he can expand on it. But my whole stance is, post, engage, and then engage again, right? Just continue to keep that momentum flowing. Don't post and forget.
So Marcus, you're going to have a chance. So I'm looking out on my LinkedIn, right? And I always see the canned photos of somebody holding a, computer in a coffee shop and something. And so what I get here is I look at this, and to your point, Alex, I'll look at these postings, and it's like somebody posts, hey, this is great. But nobody responds to it because nobody interacts. Nobody engages. And we were talking about that, Marcus. Can you expand upon that?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And I think first off, even though it may seem like, maybe Alex and myself are pretty good at social media or LinkedIn, we all started somewhere, right? And I remember when I first started, I was very intimidated. How do I use social media the right way?
Yeah.
But the question you first ask yourself is, why am I going to use social media? What's my goal with social media, right? So if your goal is to get more attention, to generate leads, etc., great, right? So that's awesome. It's first, figure out, why do you want to use social media, right? So if LinkedIn is what we're talking about here, perfect. Figure out the goal, okay? Second, like, if some people are very scared to post things, and that's why they kind of post these generic template pictures, etc., and just some very basic copy. I go even simpler, okay? And what I would do first, this is exactly what I've done, is I would go and find out who are the top 5 to 10 people in my industry who are really crushing it on LinkedIn, okay? Who are the people that are doing a really good job? And maybe it's, say, for example, maybe it's certain engineers, it's a director of manufacturing somewhere, where whoever it is. So I can go and take a look at their content, see what are they posting. Then more importantly, I'm going to go and I'm going to engage onto their posts. I'm going to go on their posts, see what are people saying on there, and I'm going to put some really thoughtful comments and interact with people on there, because more than likely, that's my target market. So that's the first piece. And you'll get, so a couple things you have. Number one, you'll get ideas about what to post. Number two, you'll start uncovering what are the questions people are asking on these threads. This will generate some ideas for future content for yourself. So the second thing I would do is I will look up specific hashtags that are of your industry. And you might start general first because you don't know. So let's just say, for example, you are a welding company, okay? You might just look up hashtag welding. Just see what shows up on the hashtag. And whoever posts on welding, you'll see very quickly, and you can engage with what people are talking about in there, right? And then you may see some other hashtag. Maybe it's like, I don't know, like welding for welders. I don't know. I'm just making something up. Hashtag welding for welders.
Yeah,
I have no idea, right? And you start looking.
I'm sure it's out there, quite frankly.
Sure, it's out there. But you'll see there's these mini communities within LinkedIn that's basically very targeted. So now you can start engaging whoever's on there, right? And you get some ideas of what people are posting on. So then from there, you'll just start generating some ideas. And then from there, then you can start posting stuff and engaging with content, etc. That's the first piece. When you start engaging on someone's thread and you're just consistent, you're showing up, they will start seeing you, and you start getting known, get attention on you by doing that, even before we post anything.
Just a follow-up point quickly, if you wouldn't mind, Scott, is really interesting what Mark has said, because it's just taken me back to when I started out and I became intentional in July last year. And the very first thing I did was I said, I'm going to speak to the top 5 people within sales when it comes to engagement on LinkedIn. And so there's a guy called Morgan J. Ingram, a guy called Kevin Dorsey, Marcus, we got to talking. And I had a Zoom session with all of those people. You're going to say something?
Yeah, I was. How do I find the top people? Where do I go? I mean, you make it sound like it's easy to find them. And we use LinkedIn in this particular scenario. How do I find them?
You just need to search, right? And
like,
Marcus,
what do you mean?
So Marcus spoke about hashtags, and that's a very big thing when it comes to social media in general. So the hashtag symbol, and then whatever word follows that, you can actually follow a hashtag or you can search a hashtag, and it's going to show you the most relevant content that is associated with that word. So anytime I post anything on LinkedIn, I will have the hashtag of sales. So if you then go and search the sales hashtag, it's going to show you the top content under that sales hashtag, right? So the same thing goes for industrial and more. So I ran that search. I found the top 5 people, and I said, before I start this, let me learn and understand what these top guys are doing. And I did a Zoom session with all of them. I took notes, I studied, and we had conversations. So when I came out to the market, the 2 things I had was relationships with the top thought leaders. So immediately they were supporting me, engaging with my content, resharing. But I also had the direct playbook, right? The playbook on how to win on LinkedIn. And then 5 months later, I'm rated as a LinkedIn top voice out of nowhere. So there was a ton of gems in what Marcus was saying, but go one step further, go and reach out to these people.
I'm out on hashtag sales on LinkedIn, and the amount of engagement is off the charts. I mean, as well, they just hashtag it, but it's insane. And I think why is it important? Why is this important for an industrial company to do this and be engaged, or have their team be engaged, whatever it might be? Why is it important?
Wherever the attention goes, where money flows, right? Wherever the attention goes, where money flows, right? So if you are getting attention on there, like, you're going to ultimately, that's just going to turn into leads down the road, right? And what's also important to understand too is social media is a long game. It's not like you put one post. If you're brand new to, you put one post, you will not see much.
Right? People think it is. I mean, there'll just be one post and that's it, and they don't get any. And then they walk away saying, well, I've been doing it and it doesn't do anything.
Right.
No, you haven't.
Exactly, right. And unless, and the mistake many people make if they're new to social media, they're using it as an advertising platform, right? When you're posting organic content, meaning you're just posting your own post, it shouldn't be any type of advertising, right? It should be something of high value to your target market, okay? And that's really, really important. So, for example, if a great way to start thinking about this is, okay, if we're going to approach these hashtags and take a look at what people are talking about, right? It might be you're sitting down to the team saying, okay, what are the biggest challenges and problems that our target market runs into, and how can we create posts that are going to help solve that problem? Okay.
I think that is gold. And I mean, it's gold because, once again, as I go out and I'm following industry, And this is not a slam on you guys who are listening here. I'm just saying that there could be a better job. We can do a better job. And I look at what is being posted, and I look at the level of engagement, and it's not good. I get the thumbs up, right?
Yes.
But I don't get the comment, nor do I get the share.
Right.
Like it's like, doggone it, Alex. That's a great post. Thank you very much for sharing. I'm going to share it with it. You got to listen to this guy and be able to do that consistently. And I'm just looking down. I'm just going down. I'm interviewing that guy.
I think it's important to remember, and you made this point earlier, Scott, it is a crowded place now, right? Back in the day, when social media was first on the scene, if you were one of the early adopters, you had a much better opportunity to stand out. Now, LinkedIn, I believe at last count, it was either 550 million members and growing. It might even be more than that now. Facebook is 1 billion plus. These are crowded places. So when we use that term command attention, we don't use it lightly. So my stance and my approach on a lot of social networks has really been double-pronged, which is phase one is to command yourself and set yourself as the thought leader. And that comes by delivering just great content. And Marcus has already made that point. So focus on, solving the key challenges, being the person that actually has a reputation for just doing the good content. The second strand for me, which I've experimented with recently, is leveraging things like ads just to extend and get a little bit more momentum. But there's a heavy caveat on that to say you must have the foundation first. And the foundation is great content, a great profile, and a good reputation. You can then take that and, to me, put some jet fuel in it by putting a little bit of budget into this, bit of skin in the game, just to operate as a billboard at the same time. And to me, that's when you start to have the winning formula.
Do you think that there's a third leg in that where, let's say I have a portfolio of customers that I'm working with, right? And, or even prospects, doesn't really matter. I want to at least engage. I can do that via these platforms and be able to say, hey, Shell, like Shell needs it. Hey, Shell, fantastic comment, great content. I like exactly what you're doing, whatever. And engage also with them and then share their stuff as well. So sort of like it's that other focus. I'll be the thought leader. I'll, get a little skin in the game, and then I'll be other focused as well and help them succeed. Is that also a strategy worth deploying? I think.
Yeah, be a team player, right? This is a little bit of give and take.
Yeah.
I think everyone knows I like my analogies and my football analogies and all sorts, but, play for the team. So I think whenever we think about sales, right, Marcus and I, we support each other massively, right? When I see a post from Marcus, I do my best to kind of get involved straight away because I know that's kind of my little bit to help him. He does the same. Right. We share each other's stuff. And it's the same with other people within the sales ecosystem, right? We try and play as a collective because it helps the industry. Right. And so when it comes to, the industrial scene, again, be the person that operates, is a team player, right? Comment on other people's stuff, reshare their stuff, like their stuff, and you'll start to find that it does kind of circle back to you as well. I mean, Marcus, do you experience the same?
Yeah, 100%, right? There's a great book called The Go-Giver, right? And that's really the concept of it, right? Which is really you're giving, right? And that's really the key. I mean, that's how you win the social media game is you give more than you take, right? And there's different like stats out there where I say, hey, listen, like you post 90% giving stuff and then 10% you're asking for something, right? I think it's 99% giving, 1% asking, right? Because in social media, except for ads are a little different, right? But in social media, you want to give as much as possible. And I think one thing that's also really important to point out, because you mentioned Shell, the way that Alex and I leverage like LinkedIn, it's a personal brand. So we're using our personal brands versus like Growth IQ or Venli Consulting, right? Now we do post stuff to our individual company pages, but we're posting primarily as our individual brand. In fact, most of the time we don't even post about our business. We're posting about other things of high value, solving problems. So people say, oh, you know what? This Alex guy seems pretty cool. This Marcus guy seems pretty cool. Let me go check out their profile. They'll figure out pretty quickly what we do.
It's baked in. It's just baked in as a result of me giving. It's you, Marcus. It's you, Alex. It is what it is. And it's funny because when we talk about podcasting and when I get companies on, I always specifically say it can't be an infomercial. Nobody's going to listen to an infomercial. It's got to be about rich, helpful content, right?
Right.
And then I said, it's always, they know it's you, company. They know. I mean, it's not as if you don't know that it's you. Mm-hmm. So it's just baked into the whole message, and you don't have to sit there and clobber them over the head while you've got the best chamois in the world, whatever it is.
Right.
You don't.
I'd say that's one of the biggest downfalls I see of a lot of people on social media. I've had a lot of people around me, ask how I got traction and why they're not. And I go onto their profile and I see about 100 posts that are just recycled links from the company they work for. Right. So, the company's just dropped a new feature. So they repost it and say, hey, here's our great new feature. And then they do some kind of corporate role change. And then they post and say, hey, we've got a new CEO. And their whole feed is just jam-packed from that. And that's one of the number one things I would say to really think about. I'm not saying don't post about your company or if you really have something to add. But again, it goes back to those two strands. Are you adding significant value or are you solving problems? Mm-hmm. And even through your posts, it's having that same lens. Are you in some way adding significant value to the industrial scene, or are you solving some challenges for someone else within the scene that's keeping them up at night? And if you're not doing those two things and you just feature bashing basically with your latest products, you're going to find it hard. You're going to find it hard.
Now, so here's an interesting, as I look out here, give us sort of the listeners out there, sort of like the general thinking with these platforms, the benefits, like LinkedIn is good for X, Facebook is good for Y, IG and Twitter and so on. Give us a little sort of overview of that.
Yeah, I mean, each of them have their own pros and cons, right? One of the great things about like Facebook, if you start doing like targeted ads, I mean, you can get so specific on how you hone in onto your target audience, right? So for example, if I wanted to find people that weld, whatever, in I don't know, let's just call it like, St. Petersburg, Florida, right? Within a certain zip code between the ages of 40 and 45 with an average income of $55,000 with black hair, you could get so granular with that. That's an amazing power of like Facebook, right? That's a really cool way to be able to utilize that platform if you're using like ads like that, right? But again, it's a little different when you're doing business to business. Like you can still do business on there, but it's still not as good as a LinkedIn. LinkedIn is much more for business to business, right? Instagram is really great for a personal brand, right? Like really good for building a personal brand. It's very visual, which is really great, So people like, you can't do long form posts or whatever. I mean, you can do it in the text, but it's a very visual platform the way it's designed, right? So for very visual like type of audiences, it's great, right? And that can be really useful. And I told all of them, for me, LinkedIn has still been the best for me just because of my target audience. I can do text-only posts that have high traction, video posts, which are doing pretty well. I can do articles on there. So it's very versatile for what I do. So it's really key is like if you're starting to figure out which platform I'm going to use, I would say start with one first and get really good at that before you change to something else. Because it's very hard to master all of them because they're all unique in their own ways.
I think Marcus has said the number one thing, again, I'd say on this topic, which is start with one. Don't try and be the master of all. And again, I think that's a downfall for a lot of companies. They think social media, so they're like, right, let me set up Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter all today, and let me work out how I can just create the master unified strategy. Sorry, go on, Scott.
No. It's interesting that you mentioned that, and I lived that. I just said, all right, I'm all in. I'm going to do this, and I just went berserk on being able to have all the platforms, and then all of a sudden, and learn from this. I've whittled it down to LinkedIn.
Wow.
And I might do a little sprinkle with Facebook, and then Twitter. I'll go out there. It's just you only have so much time.
One thing I would say that's really interesting, and Marcus, I'd be intrigued to get your perspective on this, because I've been completely reactive on Instagram, as I say, until about 3 weeks ago. And we've just spoken a lot about how our personal brands are almost the central thing that people gravitate to. And then the byproduct is that they want to transact with us. And what I found quite fascinating about Instagram is it's been a channel through which people have been able to kind of connect with me as an individual and the personal brand in a way that's been a little bit different to maybe how they've interacted on LinkedIn. And the thing that I say we can't forget is both of them have hundreds of millions, if not billions of members. And the reality is there's business people and there's business personas on both, because you can't have a billion members and everyone is, one type of person, right? There's both. But I've seen that my personal brand, I feel like it started to open up 2 cylinders, because people are connecting in a more almost personable way through Instagram, and I'm connecting with certain users there. And LinkedIn continues to be a great B2B channel where people get a ton of expert advice. I've got tailored content for that as well. But I don't know if you've had the same experience.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, it's as if each platform has its own culture, right? And like the Instagram culture is much more about personal feel, et cetera, right? And then the LinkedIn was definitely much more the business to business, right? And it's interesting because early on I spent so much time on Instagram when I first got into social media years ago, and which is definitely great with that personal brand stuff. But then I'm like, oh man, like it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to maintain all the above, to maintain that personal brand and that business brand. So I think for people that are jumping onto social media, it's like you choose one, go all in for one, right? And I'm biased. I think LinkedIn's still the best one still, especially if you're industrial, because this allows you to do a little bit of both, have a personal brand and also the business piece. I mean, that's me. I still like Instagram, but at the end of the day, most businesses are there to make money, make a profit, right? And because of what I offer, I have generated so much more revenue off LinkedIn than Instagram still. Like, I mean, and I've been on Instagram for way longer. So
here's a case scenario that I'm looking out there right now. There's a webinar, and we were talking about everybody's doing webinars now just because, well, we got to figure something out. But my beef is that the webinars are very feature oriented. This is why we're so spectacular, and this is why our technology, our services, whatever, it's very, once again, inwardly focused. And however, if I'm running if a company's saying I would like to do a webinar, okay, great, fantastic, and they'll create then I'm looking at this one right now. They'll create the graphics. They've got all the little hashtags that they're just hammering on, and in this, it's happening today. There's a little caption there, happening today, and there's no engagement, right?
Yep.
But the thing that I don't know is, like, has that been sort of pushed out there? Hey, what we're doing is we're going to be doing this podcast, or not podcast, or we're doing this, a video, a snippet, whatever way of communicating it. It hasn't been done. It looks like, hey, we're going to be doing this, and it's not going to get any traction because, well, it's happening today and people are already. So do you recommend in a case of webinars or something to do a little pre-work, and it's coming out, and then do a little follow-up and post-work on it, all of that stuff, and really nurture that whole activity around that, let's say, webinar?
Well, I think the first thing with webinars, number one, are you solving a specific problem for your customer? That has to be the goal. Like, if it's just a presentation to sell something.
Yeah, but it is. It's out there. I could scroll down and it's
100%. 100%. Like, it's kind of like, and I see this too, right? When someone's like, hey, here's a case study we did. Nobody cares about case studies.
No.
Okay? If it's just like, hey, let me just like, basically a lot of tech companies doing like these, like, basically it's a demo webinar, right? You're just doing a demo. You're not solving a problem, right? So I think number one, solve a problem with your webinar. Right, whatever the problem is going to solve, right? If it's, for example, like maybe it's like I don't know, let's call it like you want to retain more people for your company, right? Hey, we're going to do a webinar on Thursday on 5 ways to retain your top people that cost you $0. Now, if you're in HR, you're like, oh, you know what, man, that's really targeted for me, right? And maybe I sell HR software. I don't know. I'm just making something up.
You're right.
My point is the webinar has to be so specific to solve a problem to get the most people on there. Because here's the reality. People are going to subscribe to it, but not everyone's going to show up because things happen. So number one, you have to overbook, right? And then so that's really important. So you have to get that attention on there. And then also you have to promote it. Like, for example, like when I do webinar, like I will promote it in a very subtle way. I mean, you can definitely do posts, say, hey, listen, I got this webinar coming up Thursday. We're going to cover X, Y, and Z. And yeah, some people are going to engage with that. I very rarely do that. I will usually, and this is a little more complex, but I'll craft copy of a story that aligns with the theme of the webinar. That's more complex. And I'll write this whole story to get engagement so people check it out. And then, by the way, there's a lesson at the very end. And by the way, P.S., if you need a system to learn how to sell effectively, I'll teach you 8 steps how to do that in my free webinar on Thursday. So link in the comments. So it's very strategic in how I do it. But let's kind of slow it down. Number one, your webinar should solve a problem. Solve a specific problem of your target audience. Number two, you need to market it at minimum 1 week in advance, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be very targeted, right? And that's really, really important. And then it's got to be ongoing, and that's really it. So you can change your copy up, you can do ads if you want to, right? But if it does not solve a problem, they will not go on the call. If it's just like, hey, here's a webinar about welding, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Sorry.
No. That's continue.
Yeah. I think it's great talking to that concept of solving a problem. Just when it comes to outreach, I think one thing that we forget that is an amazing function of social media is that you can send messages to people typically completely free of charge, right? And this is agnostic of platform. So if you've got a LinkedIn account, you can send a message to someone for free. There's limits, but that's not something to worry about. So the point I'm making is, if you're solving a problem or a challenge or delivering value to someone, or people within your ecosystem, you should feel empowered to send that webinar out to them. It doesn't cost you anything, right? So when it comes to outreach, you've got an immediate window of opportunity to launch the webinar, pick out a list of 50 people that should be your kind of top tier 1 targets that you'd love to have on there, and have a tailored message that talks to the problem, talks to the challenge, and the why behind why you're doing the webinar. And send it out to them. Say, look, I'd love to have you on there to get your feedback. And immediately you've got someone in your funnel. If you don't have a message back within a couple of days, track that activity and follow up a couple of days later, right? But it doesn't cost you anything. So the only excuse is you if you don't do it.
That's it.
How do we, in industry, we've been so ingrained in the feature approach to selling. How do we shift? Because we're late adopters, and I understand exactly what you're saying, and you guys have been sort of at that cutting edge, and we need to get there. How do we do that? I mean,
well, I think the first piece is nobody cares about features. First off, that's the first piece, right? At the end of the day, like if I'm trying to understand, like, yes, maybe I manufacture a screw for a chair, right? That's what I do. I'm making something up, right? So what problem is that solving, right? Because all the customers care about is solve my problem, right? And that's what you focus on. You focus on the solution. What problem are you solving, right? Like, and you tie to even the concept of the webinar, right? Like the webinar is the same concept. You're solving a problem, okay? And this gets a little more sophisticated, right? But businesses really need to understand, number one, what is their refined marketing statement, right? That's an RMS, refined marketing statement, which is very simple. It's like, which is, I help target market achieve X objective without whatever obstacle. Okay. Right. So this helps, and when you have a very clear objective like that, it's like, hey, I help HR managers reduce turnover through our employee engagement software without needing billions of dollars to transition to, or something like that, right? So that RMS is really critical, and you can apply the same concept to every webinar, to your copy, to everything you do. But the thing is, you're focused on solving a problem. Again, you're solving a problem. You're not focusing on, I offer software. You're helping retain employees, right? That's why, that's a solution. So when you focus on the end goal of solution, that can apply to everything that you do. Applies to your marketing, to your sales messaging, to your copy, to everything, to your webinar, right? If I teach a webinar on software, nobody cares. I teach how to retain people so you can save money. Okay, now I'm more interested. All right, and you get even more granular, the more specific you are, the better, right? I work directly with industrial businesses, retain employees to have less than 100 people in their organization without spending millions of dollars. Yeah,
it's about being
so granular, you know.
Yeah. I think it's about being outcome driven, right? So whenever you're thinking about pitching a feature, pause yourself and think about, forget the feature, what outcome am I going to drive if this company or person adopts this feature, right? So just kind of almost inverting what you're thinking about, right? And trying to work out how you can match your proposition to either a need, a requirement, or a potential need.
Right.
So I'm always thinking about outcomes. You know, when I look at a customer, you know, I'm talking big picture about the organization, and then trying to map my offering to say, how can I help them grow their revenue? How can I help them save money? How can I improve their staff satisfaction rate? How can I improve their customer retention rate?
Right.
I'm not thinking about what Growth IQ specifically does from a feature or function perspective. I'm just like, how do I get you closer to where you want to be?
Right.
How do I map onto your priorities for the year? That's all I'm thinking about. And then I connect my proposition to those outcomes. The rest then becomes pretty simple, right?
Right.
So that's how I think about it.
Great, absolutely wonderful point. What do you think about another thing that is within industry? We tend not to bring out the human side of people. We're not known for that. Is there power with humanization of a message?
Oh yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, people buy from people, right? I mean, you know, even if you are traditional industrial, been around for a long time, like you probably have customers where it's always like a quote unquote handshake type deal, right? That's how you did business, right? Because you know each other. Before advertising was around, it was word of mouth, and that's no different, right? You're just like those are timeless messaging of having that connection with your customers and getting to know them. You just have to learn how to apply it via social media and other ways, and that humanization is so critical. So to give you a really good example, right? If I'm on LinkedIn here, and go back to even the webinar concept, right? So, you know, when you do a good job, you know, if you're connecting with new people or people are connecting with you, like one thing I do is once I connect with someone that's in my target market, they get a custom video message from me, right? And I literally film myself on my phone saying, thank you so much for, you know, adding me. Really, really appreciate that. I give them a little bit of a note and say, hey, listen, I want to bring some great value. And then I invite them to my free webinar. I include a link below, right? So I'm providing value for them. And I get a lot of people go sign up for my webinars through that way as well. But the humanization of people getting that is so powerful, so powerful.
It is. You know, one thing that I encourage and I think could be really relevant for industrial is, you know, to first of all define who your target is. So define your target market. But then the next step is to segment that into tiers. And I often encourage companies to think about having a kind of tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 structure, right? Where your tier 1 are your gold dust. So these are the prime targets that you want to knock down, the main businesses or the main people you want to, you know, transact with. Your tier 2 is kind of one step below. So you got a little bit more volume there. But in tier 1 and tier 2, personalization is key. So for example, in what Marcus described, that's kind of his kind of tier 1 play, right? Is I'm going to send you a video message.
Oh yeah.
And treat you like a VIP. And he might do that a little bit in tier 2. Mm-hmm. But then in tier 3, I categorize tier 3 as my practice tier. And that's where I'm a little bit more open to some experimentation and some automation. So I'm not a big fan of, a spray and pray and just blasting things out. But in my tier 3, I'm going to have a little bit of a mix. So this might be an industry that, or some prospects I haven't touched. I don't really know if there's much traction there. So I might give an email campaign a go. I might fire out 100 that is still based on some form of addressing a problem or some compelling event I've seen within industry. But I'm going to have a play, because if I get a bite, you might find that then needs to become a tier 1 or a tier 2 target market. So for industry, there is an ability to kind of play in a few different places. And if personalization isn't something you're fully comfortable with, just try and break it out in that way so you can test some theories out.
Make it a little bit more manageable. Now, I can do that. You can do it. And we can all, what about, I'm a company and I have an internal organization, and it's different because both of you and myself are building up a brand about us to us. Companies are different, but I still believe that humanization needs to still come from that company, but it has to be done in a different way, don't you think?
I don't necessarily. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the most powerful thing a company can do is empower its people to be brand ambassadors, right?
There it is. That's it. Bingo.
That's the key.
That's exactly
it's not
right.
saying, hey, employees, here's this image. Here's an approved legal jargon that we want you to say now in this post, right?
Yeah.
And you put it out there, and people are like, oh, that's whatever. They don't care about that, right? But if you are empowering your people, right, it's an amazing. So here's a good example, right? I think it's a tech company, Gong. They do an amazing job empowering their people, right? There's a gal, Sarah Brazier. I think it's Brazier. She has done a phenomenal job branding herself on LinkedIn, and she works for Gong, right? And now she's done such a good job with her own personal brand. They're having to do some other corporate stuff too, right? But nobody cares because she's done such a good job. And when companies kind of open their mind a little bit and they allow their people to market for them organically, it can be very powerful in growing their brand.
Wow.
A lot of companies aren't opening their doors to it. And I think this is a big takeaway from the podcast is, be the company that is open to it, because the benefits are just enormous. And companies that I've worked for, what they've seen is massive hikes in recruitment and brand perception and awareness in the market.
That's
and
brilliant.
Companies need to actually start to adopt. I mean, Marcus is bang on with that one. Wow. Because it's phenomenal. And too many organizations almost see those staff members as a threat in some way, or like, that they're doing the wrong thing. Because I think that, to be fair, they just don't quite understand it yet. So do your best to kind of educate yourself in your own company on the benefits, because you'll be a company that's pioneering versus one that's a little bit trapped in the yesterworld.
Brilliant. I mean, that really is. It's going to take some time to sort of distill it down and get it out there on Industrial Talk, but because we've recorded it, it's easy. And I'm going to listen to this again, because that is, I mean, the reality is we're going through a very interesting change, requiring us to be more innovative, question the way we do things today, and get it more engaged. And the only way, and Marcus and I was talking it, the only way that, it's the digital platforms. That's how we're getting our message out now, whether we like it or not, it is. Now, there are strategies that you guys were so kind to give that are just brilliant.
Well, and I'll give you a good example, Scott, right? Before I had my own business, I worked for a massive Fortune 500 industrial company, right? And I was a corporate director there, right? At a large organization. And it was such a competitive job market, especially back then. It was it was hard to get people to pay attention to an industrial business, right? So I knew that, right? Because people wanted to go work for really cool tech companies. And I'm like, here I am trying to convince people to go sell industrial services. So I knew by leveraging LinkedIn, right, and positioning myself in the right way. So I started producing some content, right? Started producing non-corporate proof content. Started putting it, I talk about sales training. I talk about sales. I talk about culture. I talk about leadership. And I wasn't as consistent as I am today because I had to be careful with the kind of balance, because they're a little iffy still. But I started building my own personal brand about this. And it was amazing the talent that I would recruit as a result of that. Because people are like, wow, you obviously know what you're talking about. I want to come work for your non-glamorous company. But because of what you're delivering, obviously good leadership's there. Obviously, you guys are being more progressive. Obviously, you're standing out. And it was a competitive advantage for me to be able to recruit top-tier talent that wouldn't have normally given the company a second glance. So it's a very powerful way to do that and build your brand.
Yeah, it's so true. I always say, if nobody knows you, they can't buy from you or interact with you. And I know it sounds a little bit obvious, but it all comes back to this concept of commanding attention. But when you set about a great brand, you're delivering great content, when you command attention, you're going to capture it and it's going to stick. So if you set up that foundation of actually being a brand ambassador that leads with, phenomenal information, and you're interactive and you engage, you're going to get the attention, but not only are you going to get it, you're going to develop brand loyalty. And that's kind of the next phase, right? Because it's not just about getting the attention, you want to get it. And, Marcus is the guy that talks about, getting people in and being able to manage that attention almost in a way that it means you can carry a funnel through. And, when I look at marketing and sales, I say marketing is about demand generation. Sales is about converting that demand to revenue. And so you need to understand, how do I create the attention, command it, move its way through, and then convert that to revenue.
One last question, because I know we all have heartbreaks here. How often do you do a webinar?
So I was doing one every 2 weeks, right? But it was solving specific. So I'm not doing a webinar to do webinar. I'm doing webinar to solve problems. That's the thing. Don't just do a webinar to do webinar. Do webinar to solve problems. And I'm actually taking a little bit of a hiatus, about a month or so, just because right now everyone's trying to influx it, right? So I'm very strategic on how I'm crafting my next one to be so targeted to solve an even more granular problem.
And for me, it's not been a set cadence. Again, it's been a little bit more open-ended when I see that there's a little bit of a gap in the market or a play. But what I do is I feature on quite a lot of them. So I'll do my own every so often, but I try and be a guest. I mean, I've been on about 3 in the last week, just for continued exposure.
I like it. All right, we're going to have to wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk Podcast. Alex and Marcus, thank you. I can't wait for the next series in this, whatever we're doing. It's a lot of doggone fun. I know that for a fact. You listeners out there, we're going to wrap it up on the other side, so stay tuned. Thank you very much.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
Hey, again, thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk Podcast. I get into that sales, marketing, and branding, the strategies, because we need it now. We need it more than ever. We need to compress the time between what's happening today, and you need to be strategizing today. I'm just telling you right now, we're an open book. Strategize today so that tomorrow you're a success, and you're compressing that time. Collaborate with great thinkers within industry. And fortunately for you and others, we have plenty of them. And they're willing to share. They're willing to give of their time and insights into helping you. Let's innovate. You're going to have to leverage more and more innovation to help you compress that time. I'm always going to say compressing that time. I'm always going to say collaborate, because you don't have all the answers, but we do need to compress that time and begin to fill that funnel of opportunities so that you get back up and running as quick as you possibly can and contribute to this doggone economy. And then finally, action. Marcus and Alex are about action. They're about knowing what to do, acting, and making it happen. You too. Let's be bold. Let's be brave. Let's dare greatly and continue to change the world. We need you. This podcast celebrates you. Thank you very much. Be safe and stay away from that pesky doggone virus.